There's a fascinating article that appeared in the August 5th, 2021 Scientific American. I will leave the link below in the description so you could check this out. It's by Caleb A. Scharf. And it's very, very interesting. He talks about he's a director of astrobiology at Columbia University. He's author and co-author of more than 100 scientific research articles in astronomy and astrophysics. And he wrote this article, and the title is "Oh UFOs, Where Art Thou?" And he gives 5 reasons why sorting all of this out is so scientifically challenging. And he writes, just before the release in June of the much anticipated Pentagon report on unidentified aerial phenomena, UAP, I sat down to try to create a list of the greatest hurdles to UAP scientific analysis. What I came up with were 5 major challenges that are described here, together with a cross comparison with some of the statements made in the published government report. Although only 9 pages long, that report turns out to be thorough, careful, and scientifically accurate in that it fully expresses how little certainty can be drawn from the data to hand. As the saying goes, the more things change, the more they stay the same. And he gives 5 challenges. He lists the challenges, and then he gives some commentary on below each challenge. And I'm going to go through the 5 challenges, but I'm not going to go through the commentary. You can check. I would recommend that you go to the website and read that yourself. But I will get into the 5th one. This is the 5th one. The 5th challenge is my favorite. All right, challenge number 1. All UAP UFO incidents are non-repeatable. We can't go back and perform the experiment of that exact observation again. Yeah. Yeah, it would be hard. You just can't predict what these things are going to do. Challenge number 2. There is nothing systematic in how incidents are recorded or reported. Different camera systems, radar systems, data processing, observers, and environmental circumstances mean that each incident is, in effect, an uncontrolled experiment with few ways to ascertain the real quality and sensitivity of data. Yeah, obviously. It's a tough one, I gotta say. I mean, again, he has commentary. He gets into it more, but check it out. You want to read that this article. Challenge number 3: there is no easy way to account for cherry picking of data. We don't know how often pilots or other observers see something unexpected, but then a minute later figure out what they're witnessing, or at least convince themselves they've done so, and consequently don't report anything. There could be thousands of such incidents, or very few. We don't know, and those mundane cases could actually represent all cases. I don't know about that one. Challenge number 4. If any incidents or observations are genuinely associated with something tangible and physical, we don't know whether we're looking at a single underlying phenomenon or many. It's a bit like going into a zoo blindfolded and trying to understand what you're hearing and smelling. If there's only one species, you might figure it out, but if there are 100 species, then decoding your experience is going to be very difficult. Yeah. And then challenge number 5. This is my favorite challenge here. The popular association of UAP. I love how they're changing this. Now the government's making the scientists say UAP so they don't want to sound foolish to their peers. But it's really UFOs, okay? UFOs. Let's stick with what it used to be. No reason to change that. Anyway, the popular association of UAP with hypotheses involving alien technology creates a severe analysis bias. Usually, science tries to move stepwise towards finding support for a given hypothesis or for eliminating hypotheses, and weighs those options as evenly as possible. But in this case, a hypothesis that would require extraordinarily robust evidence in order to be supported, as with Carl Sagan's famous dictum, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, regardless of what some people say, hangs heavily over any analysis or discussion, and there is a vocal community who feel that the answer is already known. That's a problem. Yeah, I think the answer is already known, and that's your problem, because all these people, including myself, who have seen these things, people who have seen a creature with their own eyeballs, right, that were taken by these beings, right? I mean, they must come from someplace else because we never see them otherwise, okay? They're not, unless they're here, Are they hiding here somewhere on the planet the whole time? We didn't know it? I don't believe that. I think they're coming from someplace else. I think they come from other planets. But anyway, he gets into this a little bit. He gives a little after he that's his challenge number 5, and then he says, in fact, and rather ironically, the socioculture stigmas around recording surprising observations mentioned in the report are undoubtedly exacerbated by elements of the UFO community that express ideas or beliefs that are, well, fantastical in nature. What's so fantastical in nature about it? What's so fantastical in nature? What's so fantastical in nature about the reality that extraterrestrials are coming here? What's so fantastical about that? I mean, decades ago, not decades, centuries ago, we had people in ships, explorers that would go to uncharted waters and find new islands and new continents and new peoples, and usually the new peoples they found weren't as technologically savvy as they were, as these explorers. They weren't at a point yet in their development where they had built ships. The best they probably had was outrigger canoes. Okay, and basically, isn't that what this is right here? What's happening here? I mean, basically, when you look out at the stars at night, you're basically looking at it. It's just like you're looking at an ocean. The space is an ocean, and all those millions of stars, those billions of stars out there, they represent possible. They represent uncharted waters, and in near those stars, there's planets, islands, whatever you want to consider them. And there's other beings out there. And some of those places have beings that are more advanced than we are, and they're traveling here just like the explorers in days of old here on Earth that found new islands and new peoples and new continents and everything else. That's what's happening. It's basically the same thing. It's what we're doing right now. We're basically humans could only get out, go to as far as the moon, basically. That's what we've been doing for the past 50 years. We send satellites up. We basically that's tantamount to the outrigger canoes by some tribe that some explorer ran into centuries ago someplace. So that's where we are right now. And how could you believe that some other race out there, some other planet doesn't have beings that have or more advanced than we are at this point, at this stage of the universe's life? Okay, there has to be, and that's what's going on. People seen these things. They're here. All these people aren't liars. Okay. Anyway, I digress. Back to the article. Consequently, as he continues, observers such as highly trained professional pilots are likely going to be reticent to mention things that they are very surprised by. This relates to point number 3 and creates bias because the unreported incidents, if further analyzed, could provide significant insight, especially as to how human observers are simply confused as opposed to witnessing genuinely unusual phenomena. Where does all of this leave us? Well, the Pentagon report does suggest ways to improve data collection and analysis, as I've described. It also points out that if some UAP do represent physical hazards or security challenges, it would be important to figure that out. In that sense, there is some possible risk mitigation to be had by investigating UAP further, irrespective of any eventually mundane or extraordinary explanation. As a scientist who studies the possibility of life elsewhere in the cosmos, I find myself saying, well, it seems worth having some more work done on this. But that's not because I think it's likely that extraterrestrials or their probes could be dropping into Earth's atmosphere. Although as a rational thinker, I can't and shouldn't permanently exclude such possibilities. My point number 5 bothers me enough that I'd rather follow the stepwise approach. There are other benefits to that strategy too. In particular, I think that the idea of a vastly more systemic collection of data from things like state-of-the-art camera systems placed on aircraft or in monitoring locations would be an interesting activity regardless of what is actually taking place in our skies. New kinds of high-resolution time-lapse data and high-fidelity monitoring of our planetary environment could have many additional benefits as we try to navigate our way through a perilously changing world, from atmospherics to animal migration to human-generated garbage floating in the air and on the sea. Seeing what's actually going on is always going to help. Like this guy, he's he's at a different place than most scientists. He's trying to walk across a rope right now. He's trying to balance himself. You know, he can't, he just can't go. He can't say, yeah, he can't go to full extraterrestrial, but he can't go to the full, it's nothing to it either. I mean, I appreciate this. This is like this article here. This opinion piece by a scientist is like, it's more refreshing. Although I don't agree with, I mean, some of the things, it's not like the some of these other scientists, but some of the things he says do bother me. Like, I don't understand, when he makes this statement here, he says, the popular, like, he thinks it's a problem that people are already there. Well, some people are already there because they've seen these things. So what else could they be? Okay, a lot of people are like, we're falling back on the Occam's razor idea. The concept of Occam's razor, that the first thing that comes to mind must be the correct one. And a lot of times it is, and it has to be with this. What else could it be? I mean, when I was a kid and I saw that thing was in my room, 10 years went, I thought this thing was a devil. It took 10 years went by in my life till I realized, no, that had to be an alien. That was more scientifically feasible. That was more that made more sense to me, because I know it wasn't human, whatever the thing was. But yeah, I mean, that's the problem. Like, they can't accept just nothing that anybody says. I mean, there is evidence out there. I mean, again, there's multiple books on this. I mean, are they looking at that stuff? Or if they did, maybe they're afraid to talk about it. And they have to, do this tightrope walk. They can't. The people will call us. Our peers will say we're idiots and fools, and meanwhile, the public will say that we're idiots. Which I do say that about some people. I think that there's some scientists out there that, they fall too. They're too much in the camp of, it's nothing. It's probably it's a prosaic answers for everything. Or maybe there's a malfunction with a camera. I mean, that's Neil deGrasse Tyson was saying that recently, that maybe the electronics that they're using to record these objects was failing. It had failed, and it just made these things up. I mean, come on, Neil. Come on. Some of these people saw it with their own eyeballs. Anyhow, yeah, check this article out from Scientific American. It's very interesting, and it's nice to see something like this. This is more of a, this guy's doing a balancing act here. It's very interesting.